I always tell people that my story didn't begin with success. It began with rejection, dozens of them. But what most people never understand is that rejection is not an enemy. It is the first real teacher life sends you. When I look back, every no I received was a doorway to something I wasn't ready to understand yet. And the moment I stopped taking rejection as a personal insult, everything in my life began to change. When you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And instead ask, what is this trying to teach me? That is the day rejection starts doing its real job. I remember the day rejection stopped feeling like humiliation and started feeling like instruction. It didn't happen suddenly. It happened after one too many doors closed in my face. When KFC rejected me, I thought it was simply another failure. But later I realized that rejection was telling me something about the path I was trying to force myself into. It was teaching me that the world will always push you away from where you don't belong, and if you pay attention long enough, the pattern becomes clear. Rejection is not the wall, it's the signboard pointing you to your real direction. Most people crumble because they take every no as a vote against their worth. I did too for a long time. But there was a moment, quiet, small, almost forgettable, when I realized rejection didn't actually change anything inside me. It only changed the picture I was holding in my mind about how I wanted life to go. And that's when I understood the truth. Rejection hurts only when your identity is attached to the outcome. When you detach your worth from the world's approval, rejection becomes neutral. It's no longer a wound, it's data, it's information, it's feedback. And suddenly you become impossible to break. There is a cliche we all hear, failure is a stepping stone. But cliches survive because they're true. The problem is not the rejection, the problem is how loudly we take it. When you are emotionally reactive, every no feels like a storm. But when you observe it calmly, every no becomes a map. This is what I learned the day I stopped asking the world to accept me. Acceptance is a trap. Approval is a prison. The people who win are the ones who use rejection as a mirror, not a verdict. From that moment on, every rejection became a teacher. Every no told me what skill I lacked. Every closed door showed me what path I wasn't meant to take. Every failure revealed a weakness I needed to strengthen. Life was training me, not punishing me. And when you finally understand that, rejection loses all its power to hurt you. It becomes your mentor, quiet, harsh, honest, and absolutely necessary. That is the day I became unafraid of hearing no, and that is the day my greatest victories began. When I look back at my journey, I realized something very important. The word no didn't just reject me, it guided me. Most people don't see this because they think rejection is a wall. But I discovered early that rejection is actually a filter. It removes the paths that were never meant for you. When Harvard rejected me 10 times, I used to think it meant I wasn't good enough. But now I understand it meant the road I imagined for myself wasn't the road that would shape me. Life was clearing the path for something bigger, something I wasn't prepared to see. You see, a no is not a judgment. It's a redirection. When KFC rejected me while accepting every other applicant, even the ones less qualified, I thought the world was unfair. But that rejection is the only reason I kept looking beyond traditional jobs. If they had said yes, maybe I would have worked there for 20 years. Maybe Alibaba would have never been born. The truth is, some opportunities are dangerous precisely because they're comfortable. Rejection removes these traps. It pushes you out of rooms that would shrink your identity and limit your impact. A yes too early can ruin a person far more than a no ever will. Most people misunderstand rejection because they confuse being denied with being unworthy. I did too. When someone says no, we translate it into you're not enough. But it doesn't mean that at all. It simply means this is not your door. When I finally understood this, everything in my life changed. I stopped chasing approval from people who didn't see my value. I stopped trying to fit into places that didn't match my destiny. And slowly, I realized something powerful. The world is trying to guide you. You're just too emotional to see the direction. There's a cliche people love to repeat. When one door closes, another one opens. But I learned something more important. Most people never find the second door because they keep staring at the first one, crying about why it closed. Winners do the opposite. When they hear no, They turn around immediately and look for the next door. They don't argue. They don't beg. They don't complain. They simply say, "Thank you for removing the wrong choice for me." That mindset alone can change an entire life. Rejection is one of the most efficient tools life uses to remove the unnecessary. The wrong people, the wrong opportunities, the wrong goals, they all disappear one no at a time. And when enough things are removed, the right path becomes visible. This is why I always tell young people, stop fearing the word no. It's not closing your life, it's clearing it. The universe can't give you what's meant for you until it strips away everything that isn't. And I promise you, those rejections you hate today are building the clarity you will love tomorrow. Rejection doesn't shrink your path, it sharpens it. When people hear my story today, they see the interviews, the applause, the success, but they don't see the long, quiet nights where rejection echoed louder than any praise ever could. Nobody talks about that part because silence isn't glamorous. Yet silence is where strength is born. After a rejection, the world goes on as if nothing happened, but inside you, everything is shaking. And it's in those private moments when no one is watching, no one is cheering, and no one is believing in you, that you have to decide who you really are. That decision does not happen on a stage. It happens in silence. When I was rejected from job after job, I didn't have a crowd telling me to stay strong. I didn't have people saying, "Jack, don't worry, your time will come." I had the opposite. I had friends laughing, family worrying, and strangers doubting. Every failure felt like a punch, and every night felt heavier than the last. But it was in those quiet nights that I discovered the truth. Rejection does not destroy you. Your reaction to rejection does. Silence forced me to listen to myself more than the world. And slowly I learned that strength grows when the noise stops. There's a secret about success that people don't like to admit. You become powerful in the moments where no one claps for you. The applause doesn't build you. The rejection does. The silence after the rejection does. That's where your emotional muscles grow. Most people break because they expect strength to come from motivation, from positivity, from things going well. But strength is not built in comfort. It is built the moment you sit alone and say, "I will still continue." That sentence, whispered in silence, is more powerful than applause shouted in a stadium. When I failed my university entrance exams twice, I felt embarrassed. I didn't want to see my neighbors. I didn't want to face my relatives. So I stayed indoors, thinking, reflecting, asking myself what I really wanted. And that silence changed me. It sharpened my direction. It made me realize that if I wanted a different life, I couldn't rely on approval or permission. I had to build a foundation inside myself that rejection could not shake. Silence is where that foundation is poured. Most people fear silence because it forces them to confront their self-doubt. But winners use it to confront their potential. There's a cliche everyone knows, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But what most people don't understand is how it makes you stronger. It makes you stronger because it isolates you. It strips away comfort so you can see who you really are without the noise. This is why I always say, never fear the quiet moments. That's where your identity upgrades. That's where clarity replaces confusion. That's where emotional resilience is built brick by brick. The world underestimates the person who keeps moving after silence. The world doesn't see how many times you wiped your own tears, how many times you got back up with no encouragement, how many private battles you fought without telling anyone. But that's exactly why rejection becomes dangerous for the people who survive it. Because once you learn how to build strength alone, the world can no longer control you with no. Silence is not empty. It is construction. Rejection hurts. There's no need to pretend it doesn't. I felt it every single time someone told me, "You're not good enough," or "We don't want you." But something changed the day I realized that pain isn't just something to survive. It's something you can study. Most people think pain is a signal to stop. Winners treat pain like data. Every no I received didn't just sting. It revealed something I needed to improve, something I needed to sharpen, something I needed to understand. That shift is the moment your entire life begins to transform. Pain stops being a wall and becomes a compass. When KFC rejected me, I remember walking home thinking, why me? Why am I always the one they don't choose? But after the frustration passed, I asked a new question. What did this teach me? That single question turned a painful moment into a strategic one. I realized that rejection exposes your weaknesses faster than success ever will. Success hides your flaws. Rejection magnifies them. It's uncomfortable, but it's honest. And honesty is the foundation of precision. If you want to grow, you must be willing to hear what the world is trying to tell you through your failures. Pain is sharp, but that sharpness can turn you into something sharper. I started paying attention to the patterns in my rejections, the jobs I applied to, the interviews I failed, the businesses that didn't work. Instead of crying about rejection, I dissected it. I studied it. I became obsessed with understanding why things didn't go my way. And slowly, I realized something powerful. Rejection was refining me. Every failure narrowed my path. Every disappointment adjusted my aim. Every mistake made my next move slightly more accurate. Precision is born from repeated course correction. Most people quit because they assume pain means they're not meant for something. But pain is not a stop sign. Pain is feedback. Failure is the stepping stone to success. Everyone has heard this cliché. But most people never step on the stone. They trip on it, fall, cry, and walk backwards. Winners do something different. They step on the stone, then the next, until the pain of each step becomes a rhythm instead of a shock. That rhythm is what turns blind effort into calculated, intentional growth. There is a secret I learned after my 30th rejection. The world is not rejecting you. The world is rejecting your current version. And every rejection is asking, can you come back stronger? When you look at failure this way, you stop feeling attacked and start feeling invited. Invited to improve. Invited to upgrade. Invited to refine yourself until the world has no choice but to say yes. Pain becomes a sculptor. It shapes your character. It sharpens your ambition. It forces you to become someone who no longer fits the old limits. Rejection does not break you. It breaks the parts of you that cannot build your future. It destroys only the ego, the illusions, and the shortcuts. What remains is the real you, the precise you, the version that thinks clearly, moves strategically, and understands exactly what must be done next. When you embrace this, pain becomes your most powerful tool. Precision is not something you start with. Precision is something rejection forces you to earn. I learned very early that rejection is painful, but the voices around you can make it 10 times worse. When I was younger, every time I failed, there were always people who made the pain heavier. Some did it quietly, with a raised eyebrow, a disappointed sigh. Others said it directly, Jack, maybe you should stop trying. These voices don't just question your abilities, they poison your interpretation of rejection. They make a simple no from the world feel like a permanent verdict. And the truth is, if I had listened to those voices, there would be no Alibaba, no success, no story to tell. I would have stayed exactly where those doubters expected me to stay. The problem is not rejection itself. The problem is how the people around you want you to react to it. Weak people want you to stay weak. Fearful people want you to fear. People who never chase their dreams will convince you that yours are impossible. I started noticing that every time I shared a failure, the wrong people felt right. They felt validated when I struggled, almost relieved that I remained small. And that's when I realized something important. Your circle is either oxygen or poison. If the wrong people surround you, each rejection becomes heavier. If the right people surround you, each rejection becomes lighter. I remember getting rejected from teaching jobs, from simple customer service jobs, from positions that paid almost nothing, and instead of support, I heard laughter. I heard gossip. I heard people say, Jack can't even get hired by KFC. What can he ever achieve? Those words could have crushed me, but instead they opened my eyes. The real rejection I needed to pay attention to wasn't coming from companies. It was coming from my environment. was surrounded by people who measured life by safety, not growth, by comfort, not ambition, by acceptance, not potential. It was clear if I stayed with them, I would become them. That was the moment I made one of the most important decisions of my life. I cut out the doubters, not with anger, not with confrontation, but with distance. I simply stepped away from people who celebrated my failures and doubted my possibilities. And something strange happened. Rejection started hurting less. Without their negativity, every no became clearer. I could finally hear my own voice without their noise drowning it out. Sometimes you don't need more strength. You just need less negativity. There's a cliche that people repeat all the time. You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But let me tell you the real impact. You become the average of their fears, their doubts, their insecurities, their limitations. If you surround yourself with small thinkers, you will shrink. If you surround yourself with people who complain, you will become a complainer. If you surround yourself with people who quit, you will become a quitter. Cutting them out isn't cruel, it's survival. When my circle changed, my reaction to rejection changed. Instead of treating failure like an ending, I treated it like information. Instead of hearing doubt after a setback, I started hearing possibility. Rejection became lighter, quieter, easier to manage. I finally understood that your environment either multiplies your courage or multiplies your fear. And if you want rejection to become victory, you must protect your mindset from the people who want you to stay defeated. Sometimes your greatest breakthrough comes not from who you add to your life, but from who you remove. Rejection doesn't just hurt your pride. It tests your emotional control. I learned early that no matter how talented or prepared you are, if your emotions are running the show, every no becomes a disaster. I remember the first time I faced repeated job rejections. My initial response was anger and despair. I would stew, I would blame, I would feel humiliated, and each negative emotion amplified the rejection. But over time, I realized something crucial. If I could manage my emotions, I could manage my outcomes. Emotional discipline doesn't remove rejection. It makes rejection powerless. When I reflect on my early failures, it wasn't the rejections themselves that defined me. It was how I reacted to them. There were moments when I wanted to scream, when I wanted to give up entirely, when it seemed easier to just accept defeat. But I forced myself to pause, to breathe, to observe my feelings without acting impulsively. I treated each no like a puzzle instead of an attack. I asked, what can I learn? What can I improve? Controlling my emotional response became the secret weapon that allowed me to take rejection as instruction instead of judgment. Most people let emotions dictate their next move after a rejection. They lash out, they sulk, they quit, and that's exactly why they remain stuck. The world only remembers those who continue despite the storm. Emotional authority is what separates someone who fails once from someone who turns 100 failures into a breakthrough. It is not about denying your feelings, it is about mastering them. You acknowledge the pain, but you do not let it drive your decisions. That's the essence of power. Quiet, steady, unwavering. I remember my very first Alibaba pitch to investors. I had been rejected countless times before. I was nervous, and my instincts wanted to overcompensate, to oversell, to argue, to prove myself. But I controlled it. I stayed calm. I listened. I responded with clarity. The rejections that came before had trained me to take authority over my emotions. And in that room, calmness became my advantage. Investors were not just buying an idea. They were buying my composure, my resilience, my ability to withstand failure without breaking. There is a cliche that people love. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. But many forget that emotional discipline is the bridge over the gap of rejection. Without it, every setback becomes catastrophic. With it, every setback becomes data, feedback, and fuel. Emotional authority transforms rejection from an obstacle into a tool. It allows you to see the truth clearly, think strategically, and act decisively even when the world is saying no. The difference between someone who crumbles under failure and someone who survives 100 rejections is simple: mastery over themselves. You cannot control the world's no, but you can control your response. And when you do, rejection loses its power and opportunity begins to reveal itself. This is how you stay powerful, calm, and unstoppable, no matter how many doors close. Failure may knock on your door repeatedly, but with emotional authority, it never controls the conversation. Most people think persistence is simple. They hear the story of Thomas Edison and imagine he just kept trying until the light bulb magically worked. But the truth is far more precise and far more instructive. Edison didn't fail 1,000 times. He discovered 1,000 ways that didn't work. And every one of those failures was data, a lesson that refined his method, sharpened his focus, and clarified the path to success. That's exactly what rejection did for me. Every no I received wasn't a stop sign. It was a note in a blueprint I was slowly assembling, a blueprint to my own greatest victory. I was rejected from jobs, from schools, from business opportunities, and even small partnerships. Each rejection felt heavy, but when I studied them carefully, patterns emerged. Some doors closed because I lacked experience. Some doors closed because my timing was wrong. Some doors closed because the opportunity wasn't aligned with my vision. Every rejection taught me something new about what worked, what didn't, and where I needed to focus. Edison's principle is simple. Repetition and analysis turn failure into progress. Without that process, rejection is only pain. With it, rejection is revelation. People give up because they romanticize success. They want it to appear suddenly, fully formed, as if it should be easy. They don't understand that the light they admire at the end of the tunnel is built on countless trials in darkness. I know because I lived it. Every no I faced in my early career could have broken me. But I treated them like Edison treated his experiments. Each was an experiment, each was a lesson, each was necessary. Persistence is not stubbornness. Persistence is precision applied over time. That is the difference between someone who quits after one failure and someone who turns 100 rejections into their greatest victory. There's a cliche people love to repeat: success is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. But here's the hidden truth. That perspiration is not random. It's disciplined, informed, and intentional. It's not about trying blindly. It's about analyzing every rejection, learning from it, and applying that knowledge consistently. Every door that closes teaches you something that no success could ever teach. That is the Edison principle in action. Without it, rejection remains frightening. With it, rejection becomes the ultimate teacher. I often tell young entrepreneurs, the world does not give yes to the unprepared. Rejection is the preparation. Every failure is a rehearsal. Every no is shaping you into someone who can handle a yes when it finally arrives. Edison didn't stumble into success by luck. He built it methodically, step by step, mistake by mistake, rejection by rejection. And that is exactly what I did. The yes that changed everything didn't come without the 100 no's that made me ready for it. Persistence does not mean mindless effort. Persistence means using every failure as a stepping stone, every rejection as a blueprint. One of the hardest lessons I learned from rejection is that it hurts far more when you depend on other people's approval. For many years, I measured my self-worth by what others thought of me. Friends, family, teachers, even strangers. Every no felt like a personal attack because I had given my power to other people's opinions. I was chasing applause instead of purpose. And that is a trap many never escape. The moment I stopped needing validation, the world's rejections lost their teeth. That is when rejection started to serve me instead of hurt me. I watched so many people, smarter and more talented than me, crumble under the weight of others' judgments. They worked hard, dreamed big, and then gave their power away. They allowed a simple no to define their identity. I realized that if I wanted to turn rejection into victory, I needed to build a shield that no one could pierce, the shield of self-worth. Approval is temporary, fragile, and unpredictable. Self-worth is permanent, unshakable, and entirely within your control. That shift in mindset changed everything. When I was rejected from countless jobs, I could have interpreted it as evidence of my inadequacy. Instead, I said to myself, their opinion is not my destiny. Their judgment is not my value. That small internal conversation transformed every failure into an opportunity to strengthen myself. I focused on building skills, gaining experience, and proving my own standards rather than anyone else's. The rejection became irrelevant, not because it didn't exist, but because it no longer controlled me. When you value yourself more than their approval, the world's no becomes an instruction, not a verdict. Self-worth doesn't mean arrogance. It doesn't mean ignoring constructive criticism. It means placing your identity in a place that cannot be shaken by external forces. Once I mastered this, I noticed a profound change. People no longer had the power to manipulate my emotions with their acceptance or denial. My confidence became independent of circumstances. I could face repeated failures without losing clarity or drive. I was no longer reacting to the world. I was directing my path through it. This principle is simple, but it's rare. Most people let fear of judgment dictate their actions. Most people beg for approval, compromising their dreams and diminishing their potential. Winners do the opposite. They treat approval like a bonus, not a necessity. They build internal standards, internal respect, and internal courage. And that is what allows rejection to transform into victory. When you stop chasing applause, every failure becomes a lesson, every obstacle a teacher, and every rejection a stepping stone. Self-worth is the armor. Approval is the sword. When you wear the armor, the sword of rejection cannot harm you. Rejection doesn't matter if you quit after one setback. What transforms no into victory is not luck, talent, or genius. It's consistency. I learned this the hard way. After repeated failures, it would have been easy to give up, to say, maybe this isn't for me. Most people do. Most people see a closed door and assume the hallway is over. But winners see that closed door and keep walking the corridor. They show up when others stop. They keep working when others have quit. And that is how ordinary setbacks turn into extraordinary outcomes. When I built Alibaba, the world said no countless times. Investors laughed. People doubted. Even my own team questioned if we could survive. But I kept going, not because I was motivated every day, but because I committed to showing up consistently through uncertainty. That is the secret that few talk about. Consistency compounds. The effort that seems invisible today will create results you cannot yet see tomorrow. Ordinary people wait for the moment they feel like trying. Extraordinary people continue when they don't feel like it. Consistency is the bridge between rejection and reward. I remember working day and night on our first website. Many nights, I received no positive feedback. Some nights, I received only criticism. It was exhausting. But every small action, every repeated step, was a brick in a foundation that no single failure could destroy. Each no became a lesson. Each challenge became a practice, and every bit of persistence added up. Consistency transforms learning into mastery. Repetition transforms weakness into strength, and patience transforms struggle into victory. The world loves to tell you that inspiration is everything, that a single moment of brilliance will carry you. That is a myth. Inspiration fades, excitement disappears, motivation is temporary, only consistency lasts. Only those who commit to the long game, who endure the grind, who survive the loneliness, who persist despite rejection, will experience the transformation that turns no into yes. You don't need to be lucky. You don't need perfect timing. You need commitment. Long-term, relentless, unshakable commitment. When you practice consistency through rejection, something extraordinary happens. Your failures lose their sting, your doubts lose their voice, and your results begin to speak louder than the noise around you. The yes you have been waiting for isn't magic. It is the outcome of showing up day after day, learning, adjusting, improving, and refusing to quit. Ordinary people quit when discomfort arrives. Extraordinary people commit through it. And that commitment turns every rejection into power. Consistency is not glamorous. It is quiet, invisible, and relentless. But it is the force that transforms 100 rejections into one unstoppable victory. This is the moment where everything comes together. 100% rejections might seem like failure to most people, but to me, each no was a building block, a stepping stone toward my greatest achievement. I've been rejected so many times that it would fill a small book. Jobs I didn't get, partnerships that fell through, investors who laughed at my ideas. And every single one of those rejections mattered, not because they stopped me, but because they forced me to grow, to sharpen my vision, and to strengthen my persistence. Victory is not a sudden miracle. It is the sum of every no you survived. I want you to understand this. Rejection is not the opposite of success. It is the path to it. Each no taught me clarity. It revealed who I truly was, what I was capable of, and what I would never accept. It taught me emotional discipline, the value of self-worth, and the power of consistency. Without those rejections, I might have achieved something, but it would not have been the victory I finally experienced. The yes that matters most is not the approval of someone else. It is the recognition of the person you became through struggle, the resilience you forged, and the lessons you internalized. That is the real prize. Think about it this way. If every rejection had crushed me, I would have never had the chance to create something meaningful. But because I refused to quit, because I studied the lessons hidden in every refusal, I turned what could have been pain into fuel. I transformed humiliation into strategy, isolation into reflection, and criticism into clarity. That is the secret most people never see. They stop at the first failure, or the 10th, or the 50th, and they assume the game is over. But the game is never over until you decide it is. Victory comes to those who survive the process, who treat rejection not as punishment, but as instruction. When people ask me how I achieved my greatest success, I don't talk about the moment someone finally said yes. I talk about all the moments when the answer was no. I talk about the nights I felt defeated, the mornings I questioned my worth, and the countless times I had to convince myself to keep going. That is where character is forged. That is where the edge is gained. That is why 100 rejections do not define failure, they define victory. Because each rejection sharpened my vision, strengthened my resolve, and prepared me for the moment when the opportunity finally aligned with my persistence. So remember this. It's not the yes that changes your life. It's the journey through every no that builds the person capable of handling that yes. Each rejection is a teacher. Each failure is a tool. Each closed door is a guidepost pointing toward the right path. If you endure, if you reflect, if you persist, those 100 rejections do not break you. They transform you. And that is how rejection becomes your greatest victory. Rejection is not the end. It is the forge in which your victory is created.